You are listening to the Justice in Heels podcast with me, your host, Danielle Hayward. Join me as I discuss interesting legal topics with inspiring female legal professionals who paved the way for the rest of us. Welcome to another episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. Today, I have Lerato Mudau with me. Lerato, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me to be part of this beautiful movement and podcast. Thank you so much. I feel overwhelmed actually for the fact that you actually thought of little me. But thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I'm excited for this conversation. So can you tell our listeners a bit more about yourself?
All right. So as Danielle has already mentioned, my name is Lerato. My initials are actually LLB, and I actually studied LLB, and that's, when people actually come across that and they ask me, like, people thought I was just using LLB just because I studied LLB, but in fact those are actually my initials. But my name is Lerato, my surname is Mudau, and I hold an LLB degree from the University of South Africa. I am currently undergoing my articles. I am in my second year, so basically I am a senior candidate attorney, and I enjoy not as much reading as I used to. I won't lie, because I think doing articles is just overwhelming. So reading time is basically studying time. So I won't necessarily say my hobby is reading, but I could say that my hobby is, just going to church. Like, going to church for me is such a reliever. And I think Danielle has seen some of my posts, which I post because I'm Jewish. So on the Sabbath, I'd be posting Sabbath, quotes, Sabbath pictures. So basically that's me. I enjoy singing, so if you want to find me, you can catch me singing at church. And yeah, that's Lerato in a nutshell. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. And you also clearly like fashion, because I also always see the pictures that you have on Instagram, and then you are just like amazingly dressed and you look so good and so fancy, and I just go like, yes, queen. I just love it.
Cute. Oh, thank you. But I you know what? I'll give credit to my mom, because my mom is a fashion designer. So, every style that I see, I'll be like, oh, mom. She'll be like, oh, this will look nice. Let's piece this together and let's see. And it will actually come out so beautiful. So I give credit to my mom, to be honest, with regards to the fashion. Mom always checks me before I go to work. I love it.
That's amazing. So tell us, what was the biggest adjustment for you when you started your articles, when you started as a candidate attorney?
Oh my gosh, I had so many big adjustments. I won't lie. It was literally from, trying to tie a shoelace to wearing a shoe. It was a bit, not even a bit, it was definitely a drastic change. So one thing I've realized is in university, there are a lot of things that they don't really train you for once you get to the other side of becoming a candidate attorney or even practicing. It shook me so much that I actually thought that I was losing the plot along the way. But my principal kept telling me, no, you won't learn if you don't make mistakes. But the biggest adjustment was just the work environment in general. And bear in mind that this is my first job. I have never worked in my life. So this was a very big adjustment, especially because my firm is in Randburg and I stay in Pretoria. Now, I needed to, obviously, when I have to prepare, I need to prepare for leaving early in the morning. Work starts at 7:30. I need to make sure I'm there before 7:30. We knock off at 4. By the time I get home, it's around 6 because there's traffic. So that adjustment also, I'm used to just being home with UNISA. You study at the library, you come back home. And now with working, I need to wake up extra early. I need to make sure that, I don't get late because my boss is literally going to chow my head, such things. I got really scared the one time I was actually late. And I thought, because that was one question they asked me in my interview, seeing that you stay in Pretoria and our firm is in Randburg, what will you be doing for you to reach work, on a daily basis? And I remember saying, specifically, if I wake up early, there's no reason that I should be late. And that day when I was late, oh my gosh, was I not embarrassed? I was so embarrassed because my principal, as much as they were a panel, but my principal is the one that asked that question. She asked me that question, and when I was late, guess what? She was like, waking up early, huh? And I'm like, oh wow. But yes, basically that was my exactly. That was a big adjustment for me. I don't want to lie. Also, the second adjustment is just like I said, the work environment, just working in a space with professionals, with real life cases. Now you're not just working with cases from the textbook, but you're working with a matter that's brought to your hand and they say draft this or do this, and you're like, oh my gosh, if I mess this up, the firm will be held liable. So I still have that fear till today. Even when I go to my court appearances, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't make it or if I don't get an order, I become a bit shaky. But yes, basically that.
I think it's normal because, like, I mean, you're still learning, but also so far so good. You've made it this far. You're already in your second year. So it's just like the small part to go, and then you are an attorney, finally.
Hopefully, I mean, with these exams, hopefully, we pray.
Yes, we do. So you now mentioned what was a bit hard about starting as a candidate attorney, but what is the part of your job that you enjoy the most?
I could say one thing that my principal has trained me to do thus far is drafting. And I heard someone once speaking about drafting, and they said drafting is definitely a skill. And once you master that skill, you're going to go far. You are going to go places. And that's when I realized, because my principal gives me so much drafting in a week that it's crazy. I would look at other candidates like, are you guys getting draftings? Like, are you guys getting draftings? They'd be like, no, we're only getting like summonses. I'll be drafting applications to compile. I'll be drafting, okay, yes, summons, I see them, but like other applications. And I'm just discoveries, and I'm just there like, oh my gosh. I keep asking the other candidates, like, are you guys doing the same thing as me? They're like, no. Are you guys doing the same things as me? They're like, no. Then I realized that, what? In the long run, this is going to be of my good. It's going to help me in the long run. And I really appreciate that of her. I really, really appreciate of her. Another thing is that my principal is very sweet. I hear a lot of people speaking about their principals, and I don't really hear good things with regards to that. But with my principal, we have that relationship. There's an open door policy between us. If anything is wrong, I could walk in there. If anything is wrong, she doesn't shout at me or scold me in front of, the entire staff. She would call me, into her office, sit me down, and we speak through it. Like, there's no shouting. She treats me as a human being. So for that, I'm grateful. I'm really thankful for that. And I've been saying that I've been praying for such a working environment. And you know what? God really provided.
So glad to hear that, because I also told like one of my previous guests, not a lot of people actually have good memories of their articles. Like, they usually have really bad principles or they have really bad experiences. So yeah, I'm really glad that you are not one of those people. But on that note, I wanted to ask you, I read this post on LinkedIn where this one attorney said that she just feels that candidate attorneys are glorified messengers and tea ladies. So what is your opinion on that?
I just need to chuckle a bit.
Oh.
I'm not sure when they mean glorified in what in what perspective are they looking at it from? Because in reality and in all honesty, I think what they're trying to do is they've also been through that process. And for me, when I was speaking to my principal about it, because we'd spend hours and hours at court for like one thing. And whenever I got back to the office, I'm tired. I'm like, but is it necessary for us to go to court just, to fight with these people just for one thing? And she said to me, we went through the same thing. And as much as you think maybe we are punishing you guys, or maybe we just want to throw you guys in the wolves, but we want you guys to learn the processes, the steps. If you need something, someday you will need to go do it yourself. Where will you start? You'll have to go to court. Who will you go to? Now you need to know the channels that, okay, when you need to go to a default office, this is, the fourth floor. When you need to go to, I'm talking about high court now. When you need to go to settlement roll, you need to go to the fourth floor. If you have problems with court orders which haven't been uploaded on the new system that's been used, court online, that you need to go to the courts, the clerk the judges secretaries in order for you to get that court order. So basically what she was saying, it's for us to actually learn. As much as we may see it as glorified messengers, because sometimes we do miracles for them. For example, I'm going to share a brief example, something that happened about a month ago. We had a date on for a default judgment, and it was not on the court roll. The roll, when we saw the roll, it was not there. Now the clients are coming from Limpopo. This is on a Friday. The court is in session on Monday. The clients are supposed to be in Pretoria on Monday. My principal was like to me, this matter is not enrolled on the court roll, and there is no way. We've been waiting for years to get this date. I don't know. One of my colleagues was already at court. I contacted her, asked her to check the roll. She said you're not on the roll, and I'm like, okay, can you go ask what's the problem? Why we're not on the roll? She went to go ask, and I don't know. They gave her some attitude. I had to drive from Randburg at 11:30. These court officials, by 12, they're already packing their stuff and they're going home. I had to perform a miracle. But you know what? I'm not even going to give it to myself, because that was definitely God. I rushed from Randburg to Pretoria High Court. I went to go beg the secretaries. I went to go beg the clerks. Clerk didn't want to hear anything. I went there and I begged, and I came back with that name on the roll. And my principal was like to me, I will not give you any nonsense for 2 months. And for me, it was kind of just like, now that you're saying that we are kind of glorified messengers, they actually sometimes do expect that type of miracle from us. And I think maybe it's not even a miracle per se, but they probably want to stretch and see how far we can go and how far we could push. So for me, it indicated that she had so much trust in me that I could pull this off. As much as a lot of people know that it's quite impossible for you to enroll a name back onto the roll if the matter is literally on Monday. So for me, it kind of told me to say, you know what? She actually trusts me to that extent that I could pull something. She was literally tapping into my capabilities. And, God pulled through on that day, to be honest. So with that glorified, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know if really we are glorified, but sometimes we do perform miracles which they probably don't expect us to perform. But now when it comes to tea, I won't necessarily say we're tea ladies, because when she gets coffee, I also get my coffee. So which I'm happy about.
It's not like you're only making tea for them.
Exactly. I don't even make the tea. I mean, as much as I'm sure you see my posts on Instagram, like we're always on Seattle Coffee. So whenever I go for a coffee run, they're part of that coffee run, So I don't necessarily think I don't make the tea. But if needs be, like I rush out to the nearest Seattle Coffee and I'll buy coffee for my principal and I.
Okay, interesting view. I think what they actually meant by glorified messengers is they literally just pay you to do all the grunt work, but glorified in a sense that you have a degree behind your name, but you have to do all the grunt work. But I mean,
Oh,
it's necessary in some way, because like you said, you have to do things that you don't want to
yeah,
do, but you have to learn
yeah,
because you know have to
yeah.
know how to do it. But also on the other side, I think it's also a case of respect, because I think
True.
just like candidate attorneys have to have respect for like all the legal practitioners and for their principals, the principals should also in some way have some respect for their candidate attorneys. And
True.
it seems like you are one of the lucky ones and that your principal has a lot of respect for you and she helps you so much. So that makes me so happy.
What?
So
I won't lie.
other note,
Hmm.
so on another note, you mentioned a very interesting story about courts just now. So I wanted to ask you, for first year candidate legal practitioners who need to go to court for perhaps like the first time in their life, they've never even been in court for anything. What advice do you have for them to know where to go, who to speak to, that type of things, just to make it a bit easier for them?
So the first advice I could give is be nice to everyone, from the security guard to the cleaner. You just need to be nice to every single person who's in that building. That's the first step. The second step, I mean, when we went there, we had someone navigating us. There was already a candidate attorney at the firm who was already navigating us to, magistrate court and high court. Specifically high court. I was familiar with magistrate court because I've done some shadowing at magistrate court, but with high court I wasn't that familiar. But basically we had there's this list that they actually put up that has like everybody's contact lists at court, from the judges secretaries to the clerks to the different departments. So what we did is we took pictures and we printed out those papers. And every time we went to court, obviously we would, okay, if they sent us for like a court order, we'd obviously have to check who was the judge's secretary for that matter. Then we go to that secretary. Or if it was a default matter, we'll check, okay, default judgment, this is fourth floor. But you get used to it. The more you look into that paper, you get used to it. You won't even need it. I don't even need that paper anymore. When they say go to court, you need to go get a settlement roll date. I already know where I'm going. So first things first, always be nice and always ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Never assume, because those court clerks are vicious. They are very vicious. If you don't ask and you assume, they will definitely have you. They will have a Christmas party with you. So the least you can do, humble yourself, good day, ma'am, good day, sir. I'm looking for settlement roll office, or I'm looking for the default judgment office, or I'm looking for do you know where I can find this? Can you maybe help me? Just be polite. Literally, like that's what I've been thriving off, like being polite. And I think it has worked in my favor because your face even starts to become familiar in the court. They remember you. When you start making conversations with them, they remember you. There's so many people that remember my face at especially high court. And when I get there, it's like the smile. Oh, hey, I'm good. Then I move on. But for the fact that they still remember this face, for me means that, I've done something, I've impacted someone,
And an
and
impression.
exactly. So for me, politeness, humbleness, for the first year candidates who are definitely going to go to court, they definitely going to go to court, definitely going to go to court. Politeness, being humble, ask, never ever assume. Please never ever assume. It won't end well. It definitely won't end well.
That's good advice. Thank you for sharing. So, what advice do you have for an LLB graduate who may be struggling to get articles?
Oh my gosh, I think this question is one that is actually close to my heart because as much as I used to just rush things, and I realized after that there was no need for me to rush. The process was still ongoing and I was going to get where I needed to be, of course, at the right time. I've been applying for articles since second year, and I've never been called. I've only started being called in my last semester, and I had just finished my final exams. So for me, it showed that there was a process that I needed to go through. And at that time, when I started applying in second year, firms were actually taking law students for candidate attorneys. It was just before the law amended and said no LLB students are now going to be, being candidate attorneys. So obviously I was there applying, got rejection letter after rejection letter, rejection letter after rejection letter. And now I'm losing that demeanor. I'm losing that, that edge to just keep, applying. And then I remember saying to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I was in my third year now. I'm like, Mom, I feel like God has forgotten me. And I used to cry, Danielle. I used to cry. And I'm like, there is no way my peers are making it. And I'm sitting here. Yes, I'm studying, but I mean, I could be studying and working at the same time. I don't think I really meant that, because right now that's happening and I'm not sure if I'm coping. But I'm not sure if I'm coping. Studying and working at the same time, I would not recommend. But basically then, obviously, I just wanted to just get into it. Like, I just wanted to get into practice and just see what's going on the side. But God said it was not time. I remember when I applied on LinkedIn. At first, I used to think LinkedIn was a scam. I'm like, no, I've been applying and I'm not getting any responses. Like, it's always rejection letters. Like, I've been applying for government posts. They never called me. I've been applying and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer voting. Firstly, government does not call me back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm just no longer doing anything because I feel like my energy is just going down the drain. Then my mom was like, no, it's not time yet. Like, just keep you focus on your studies. When you're done and when the time is right, something will come up. Did something not come up? I applied for the first one. They called me in for a formal interview. I went and they told me that they deal specifically with conveyancing. And would I then be comfortable with just dealing with conveyancing? And I said, I'm willing to learn. But then when he looked at my CV, when the director looked at my CV, it's one of the firms in what is this? Menlyn. It's next to Menlyn. It's not far from where I stay. And then the director looked at my CV, he looked at my results, and he said, you're way too good for us for what we want to pay a candidate attorney. And I just looked at him in his face and I'm like, what are you trying to say, sir? Are you trying to say you're not going to give me a job because you're going to underpay me? And like in my head, it's all running in my head. And I'm looking at him, waiting for him to say more. He says, this is too good. I'd rather actually give the CV to someone. My son owns a law firm as well. And they deal specifically with family law and labor law. And I think maybe you would be more fit there than here. Because when I look at your results, this is way too good for what we want to pay a candidate attorney. And then he said, I'll keep in contact. I'll give my son the CV and he'll contact you. Literally 3 weeks went by. The son contacted me, asked me for an informal interview. We went, he was with his partner. I forgot the lady's name, but he was with his partner and we went to a golf course. We were just having a brief conversation. And I think they just wanted to channel and hear what I would love to work with and if I would actually be suitable for what they practice. And then I never got a call back from them, but I was never discouraged. Kept applying. Like mom said, keep applying, keep applying. I applied to this one firm, Moss and Associates, and that's where I'm currently at right now. When I applied via LinkedIn, and surprisingly, an email came in from one of the directors asking me, it was pre-screening questions, basically. And he asked me to respond via email. And if I didn't respond within 24 hours, then I would lose my chances of even getting to the formal interview. Then I sat down and I read the email and the questions. I know I starred that email because it was one of the best emails that could ever come through. And he asked me a few questions. I answered those questions. And then the next step was, after I replied to his email, he replied back to ask me if I had received my certificate. And luckily, I actually had received my certificate a week ago from the date of that interview, from the date of the email. Then he asked me to send it to him and my full academic transcript. I sent it to him. Then he replied back to say they are now officially inviting me to a formal interview, and it was going to happen via Zoom because it was during COVID. This is 2021, the first week of December, last week of November, first week of December. And I remember saying to my mom, oh my gosh, like on Zoom, like, how's this going to turn out? Like, oh my gosh, like, but I prepared. And like the answers that I prepared, they're just running through my head. Like, okay, they probably ask you this, they literally asked me questions from my CV. And for me, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, the only question that caught me off guard was one of the COVID questions. And when they asked me, what do I think of when employers basically force their staff members to comply with the vaccines? What do I think about that? And I remember thinking to myself, limitation clause. It has something to do with the limitation clause. There's something there with the limitation clause. Like, they are allowed to limit their rights, but to what extent, So I remember saying limitation clause, but I didn't carry on. And then the director was like, is that all? I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, is that all? I'm like, yes, sir. I was just like, okay. Then they asked the other questions. Then they asked me if I had questions. And I usually would say no, because I'm one shy person, right? Well, now I don't think I'm shy anymore like I used to be before. I've gained more confidence than when I started articles, But before, like, I was so shy. But when they asked me, and then I asked them, like, when do I then expect an answer or feedback from you guys? They said it usually takes a week. Danny, literally 3 days did not go by, and they sent me an email offering me a letter of offer and placement.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was like I literally almost threw this laptop like to the roof, because I was like, what? That's how I actually obviously secured articles. So I would say perseverance, just keep applying, just keep throwing your CV everywhere, but be cautious of where you throw it. Don't just throw it anywhere. Obviously there's the whole scamming and human trafficking issue. So you also need to, bear in mind, if you see the email is dodgy, a
Gmail account, for example.
Exactly. So if it's like a Gmail account and the firm is saying Johnny and Brian, they're supposed to have a work email address, you understand? So if it's shady, like, you need to just be careful and make sure that you do a lot of research when it comes to that. But perseverance, keep throwing in those CVs, keep throwing them, and don't even throw one and then sit back, because that's what I used to do. I used to throw one, sit back, throw in one, keep throwing in the next one, keep throwing in another one, just go. Something is definitely going to give.
I think that's brilliant advice. And also, I love that you shared your story with us. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So, since this podcast is called Justice in Heels, I wanted to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were underestimated purely because you are female?
In the workplace?
In the workplace or anywhere, actually. I know you are very new to the working environment or corporate world, but anywhere.
I mean, in the work environment, not as yet. I haven't encountered that. But I'm probably going to get bashed for this by those who are going to watch this podcast. But in my church environment, yes, I have. But it's not just with me, but there's still this stereotype of males are the ones who are supposed to do certain things, and females are not allowed to be doing certain things. But one thing that I love about, obviously, I've mentioned that I'm adherent of the Judaic faith, so I'm a Jew, and one thing that our our head priest, who we call a chief rabbi, we call our chief rabbi, one thing that he has tried to do is bring back that oneness, to say, we cannot say males are doing this and females can't do this. We are all one. We're all one family. We all equal. There is no you're higher than this person or you're higher than that person. So one thing that I like that he's been doing this far is trying to bring back that equality. And it comes back to how, as South Africans, we also still dwell amongst that equality. As much as our chief rabbi resides in the United States of America, but it for me, it kind of sums up to say, how can someone who's there try to bring such equality? And yet in South Africa, we also deal with this equality aspect. And for me, it kind of, it gelled together. It made sense to me to say, oh my gosh, this man is definitely trying to do something. So that there has been incidents, but they are now minimal because of what he's been trying to curb and trying to bring, back that equality. But yeah, other than that, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So this was really nice. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and thank you so much for sharing all your stories. It's always such a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I hope that what I have shared will definitely inspire the next person, even if they're feeling discouraged or even if they just need some, extra motivational push. When they listen to this podcast, maybe something might spark, for them, a drive for them to just keep pushing and, just keep applying if they're looking for articles, keep studying, pushing if they're still studying, they're still LLB students. They just have to keep going. They just have to keep going. This life, you fall now, you pick yourself up, you keep moving, you fall again, you pick yourself up, you just keep going. It's a circle, it's a cycle. You just keep going.
Definitely. So where can our listeners reach you? Are you on social media?
Yes, I am. And I know that I'm on social media, but on Instagram they can find me. My handle is Lerato _Mudau. And I think usually they can actually use LLB _Mudau to actually find me quicker. But if they type in Lerato Mudau, it will definitely come up as LLB _Mudau. On Facebook, I am Lerato Mudau. And on LinkedIn, I am Lerato LB Mudau. And if they want to connect with me via email, they can find me on my email address is lerato@mos .inc.co.za.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. If you like this episode, we would love for you to share it with your friends on social media and tag us. As this is a legal podcast, here is a quick disclaimer. The views expressed in this podcast are solely the views of the individuals involved and not those of the firms, brands, or anyone else that we are affiliated with. Till next time.